The Mayor of London just issued a warning that sent shockwaves through the entire property industry. Speaking at an emergency housing summit in October 2025, Keir Starmer delivered a message that no one wanted to hear, but everyone needed to know. London's housing market isn't just struggling, it's about to get much worse. Starmer didn't mince words. He told an audience of developers, estate agents, and housing experts that without immediate intervention, London could face its worst housing crisis in 50 years. But here's what he didn't tell the public in that carefully worded press release afterward. The crisis isn't coming, it's already here, and the mayor knows exactly how bad things are about to get. 3 families were made homeless in the same week in October 2025, not because of unemployment or family breakdown, but because their landlords could no longer afford to keep them as tenants. The first family, a teacher and a nurse with 2 young children, had lived in their Clapham flat for 4 years. Their landlord's mortgage payments jumped from £1,800 to £2,900 per month in just 18 months. He sold the property to a cash buyer who immediately evicted them for renovations. The second family, a social worker and an accountant, lost their Islington home when their landlord decided that short-term holiday lets would be more profitable than long-term tenants. The third family, 2 NHS workers, were priced out when their rent increased from £2,000 to £3,200 per month with just 2 months' notice. These aren't isolated incidents. They're symptoms of a housing market that's eating itself alive. And according to sources close to City Hall, the mayor's private briefings paint a picture that's far worse than anything he shared publicly. But what exactly did Starmer learn that made him issue such a stark warning? And why are insiders calling this the beginning of London's housing apocalypse? Let's start with the numbers that the mayor's office doesn't want to publicise, because they reveal just how catastrophic the situation has become. London house prices fell for the first time in over a year in August 2025, dropping 0.3% compared to the previous year. That might sound insignificant, but in a city where property values historically only move upward, even a tiny decline signals something fundamental has broken. The average house price in London now sits at £684,000. For context, that's nearly 3 times the UK average. But it's not the price that's causing panic in the mayor's office, it's the complete collapse in market activity. Properties are taking an average of 45 days to sell in London, 20% longer than last year. In some boroughs, homes are sitting empty for months. Estate agents report that serious buyers have virtually disappeared. Viewings are down. Offers are rare, and when they do come in, they're typically 20 to 30% below asking price. Sellers are caught in an impossible position. They can't sell at current prices, but they can't afford to reduce them either because most are trapped in negative equity scenarios. Meanwhile, there are 7% more homes for sale than 12 months ago, creating a supply glut that's pushing prices down further. But here's the detail that really alarmed the mayor's housing team. The crisis isn't limited to luxury properties in prime central London. It's devastating the middle market where ordinary Londoners live. 3-bedroom family homes in areas like Wandsworth, Lewisham and Croydon. 2-bedroom flats in former hotspots like Hackney and Southwark. Properties worth between £500,000 and £2 million are seeing the steepest declines. These aren't investment vehicles for wealthy foreigners, they're family homes for teachers, nurses, firefighters, and office workers. And they're becoming unsellable. This is what prompted the mayor's emergency warning. When the housing market fails for middle-income families, the entire social fabric of the city starts to unravel. The rental market tells an even more disturbing story, and it's here that the mayor's concerns become truly alarming. The average rent in London hit £2,300 per month in early 2025, marking a 4.5% increase in just 3 months. But that average masks extreme variations across the city. In Notting Hill, rents jumped 9.3% in a single quarter. In Camden, they soared 14.4%. In contrast, areas like Hampstead saw rents fall 8.3% and Islington dropped 11.3%. This isn't normal market fluctuation, it's the sign of a rental market under severe stress, where some areas are experiencing massive demand while others are being abandoned entirely. Here's what those numbers mean in human terms. A young professional earning £50,000 per year takes home roughly £3,000 per month after tax. Financial experts recommend spending no more than 30% of income on rent, which would be £900 per month. But the average London rent is £2,300. Even spending 50% of income on rent, which financial advisors consider dangerous, leaves them £1,500 short every month. This isn't about lifestyle choices or avocado toast. It's about basic mathematics that simply don't work. And it gets worse. Room rentals, which used to be a stepping stone for young people starting their careers, now average £995 per month. That's nearly a 6% increase in just 3 months. Sharing a house with strangers in Zone 4 now costs what a one-bedroom flat in Zone 2 cost 5 years ago. But the most shocking statistic that landed on the mayor's desk was this. The number of private rental homes in London fell by 6% between 2023 and 2024. In a city already facing a housing shortage, thousands of rental properties are disappearing from the market entirely. Properties are being sold to owner-occupiers, converted to short-term holiday lets, or simply left empty because landlords can't make the numbers work anymore. The result is a catastrophic mismatch between supply and demand. According to property portal Rightmove, an average of 8 people now inquire about every available rental property in London. That's not a healthy market, that's a crisis. And with social housing waiting lists at their highest level in a decade, there's nowhere for displaced tenants to go. The mortgage crisis is the third pillar of London's housing catastrophe, and it's the one that has the mayor's economic advisors most worried. Interest rates have risen from historic lows near 0% to 4% as of October 2025. That might not sound dramatic, but for property owners, it's been devastating. Consider a typical London mortgage of £400,000. At 2% interest, monthly payments were roughly £1,600. At 4%, they've jumped to around £2,300. That's an extra £700 per month, or £8,400 per year. For landlords operating on thin margins, this increase alone has made buy-to-let properties unprofitable. But it gets worse. Financial markets are pricing in the possibility that rates could reach 5% or higher if inflation remains stubborn. At 5%, that same mortgage would cost £2,700 per month. For many property owners, especially those who bought at peak prices in recent years, these payment increases are simply unsustainable. This is creating a wave of forced sales that's flooding the market with properties at exactly the wrong time. The Mayor's Housing Intelligence Unit estimates that over 40,000 homeowners in London are currently at risk of repossession or forced sale due to mortgage payment increases. These aren't reckless speculators who over-leveraged themselves. They're ordinary families who took out mortgages when rates were low and banks were encouraging borrowing. Now they're trapped in properties they can't afford to keep but can't afford to sell. First-time buyers have been completely priced out. Despite lower property prices, the combination of higher deposit requirements and increased mortgage rates means that home ownership is now mathematically impossible for most young Londoners. Estate agents report that first-time buyer inquiries have fallen to their lowest levels since the financial crisis. The few who can afford deposits often fail affordability tests because lenders have tightened their criteria significantly. This creates a vicious cycle. Without new buyers entering the market, existing owners can't sell. Without sales, prices remain inflated. Without price corrections, properties remain unaffordable. It's a housing market caught in a death spiral, and the mayor's team sees no easy way out. The landlord exodus represents perhaps the most immediate threat to London's housing stability, and it's this trend that has prompted the most urgent warnings from City Hall. Government data shows that 19% of landlords sold properties in 2024, while only 8% bought new ones. That's a massive net loss of rental stock. But surveys suggest the exodus is accelerating. 41% of landlords are planning to reduce their portfolios or exit the market entirely within the next few years. Think about what that means. Nearly half of all rental properties in London could disappear from the rental market. The reasons are straightforward economics. Mortgage rates have more than doubled for landlords, but there are limits to how much rent increases tenants can absorb. Many landlords are now making losses every month. Insurance costs have skyrocketed, maintenance expenses have increased with inflation, and new regulations have added complexity and cost to property management. The Renters Reform Bill, which removes Section 21 no-fault evictions, has made many landlords nervous about problem tenants. From their perspective, it's become much harder and more expensive to remove tenants who don't pay rent or damage properties. Meanwhile, changes to furnished holiday, let tax benefits are forcing many short-term rental operators to either sell or switch to long-term lets. But when they make the switch, they often discover that long-term rental yields don't cover their costs anymore. So they sell to owner-occupiers instead, removing the property from the rental market permanently. The result is a perfect storm. Rental supply is shrinking just as demand remains high. Social housing waiting lists are at record levels. More people are being forced into the private rental market, but there are fewer properties available to rent. This is pushing rents higher in available properties, while simultaneously creating homelessness among those who can't compete for the limited stock. Local councils are reporting unprecedented numbers of families presenting as homeless. Emergency accommodation costs are spiraling out of control, and the mayor's office estimates that without intervention, London could see rough sleeping numbers double within 2 years. The Airbnb explosion has added another layer of complexity to London's housing crisis, and it's one that particularly concerns the mayor's regulatory team. Short-term holiday lets have increased from 30,000 to 100,000 since 2021. That represents 70,000 homes that have been removed from the long-term rental market. Under current rules, whole properties can only be let on Airbnb for 90 days per year without planning permission. But enforcement has been virtually non-existent, and industry estimates suggest that half of all short-term lets are operating illegally. These aren't just investment properties owned by professional landlords. Many are family homes where owners rent out their entire property while they're away, or spare rooms that have become full-time holiday accommodations. The financial incentives are compelling. A property that might rent for £3,000 per month on a long-term basis can generate £6,000 to £8,000 per month as a short-term let in popular areas, but this comes at a massive social cost. Every property converted to short-term letting removes a potential home for a London family. It also drives up rents in surrounding areas as competition for remaining long-term rentals intensifies. The mayor's office is preparing new regulations that would create a national registration scheme for short-term lets. The plan is to make it much easier to identify and prosecute illegal operators. Industry analysts estimate this could force up to 40% of current short-term lets back into the long-term rental market. But there's a catch. Many of these properties are only financially viable as short-term lets. If forced back to long-term rentals, their owners might simply sell instead, potentially to owner-occupiers rather than rental investors. This could actually reduce rather than increase the total rental stock. It's another example of how every potential solution to London's housing crisis creates new problems elsewhere in the system. The social consequences of London's housing crisis are already visible across the city, and they're what drove the mayor to issue his stark warning about worse times ahead. Rough sleeping has increased to 4,427 people, the highest level in years, but that number only captures people sleeping on the streets. It doesn't include the thousands living in cars, squats, or overcrowded accommodation with friends and family. Hospital workers are commuting from towns 50 miles outside London because they can't afford to live anywhere closer. Teachers are leaving the profession not because they don't love teaching, but because they can't afford to live in the communities where they work. Fire stations are struggling to maintain adequate staffing because firefighters can't afford homes within reasonable commuting distance. This isn't just about individual hardship, it's about the fundamental viability of London as a functioning city. When key workers can't afford to live where they work, essential services start to break down. When young people can't afford to start their careers in London, the city loses its dynamism and innovation. When families are forced to move hours away from their communities, the social fabric that makes neighborhoods work begins to fray. The mayor's economic team has calculated that London's productivity is already being impacted by housing costs. Workers spend more time commuting, arrive tired, and are distracted by financial stress. Companies struggle to recruit and retain talent because salary levels that seem generous elsewhere are inadequate in London. Some businesses are already relocating operations to cities where their employees can afford to live. But perhaps most concerning for the mayor's advisors is the generational divide that's emerging. Older Londoners who bought properties decades ago have seen massive wealth accumulation through house price growth. Many own their homes outright and are insulated from the current crisis. But younger generations face the prospect of permanent exclusion from home ownership and increasingly precarious rental arrangements. This creates a dangerous political dynamic where housing policy becomes a zero-sum game between generations. Existing homeowners resist new development that might reduce their property values. Young people become increasingly frustrated with a system that seems designed to exclude them. Social cohesion breaks down when housing security becomes a privilege rather than a reasonable expectation. Here's what the mayor's private briefings reveal about what's coming next and why his public warning was necessary to prepare Londoners for an even more difficult period ahead. Market analysts predict that house prices in London could fall 10 to 15% over the next 18 months as forced sales from mortgage distress accelerate. That might sound like good news for potential buyers, but it will trap hundreds of thousands of existing homeowners in negative equity situations. More landlords will exit the market as their properties become unprofitable. The mayor's housing team estimates that London could lose another 50,000 rental properties over the next 2 years. With social housing unable to absorb displaced tenants, homelessness will increase significantly. Rents in remaining properties will continue to rise, making the rental market even more unaffordable for ordinary workers. The mayor's economists project that average rents could reach £3,000 per month by the end of 2026. Essential worker shortages will worsen as more teachers, nurses, police officers, and firefighters are priced out of London. Some services may need to reduce operating hours or close facilities due to staffing shortages. The social divide between property owners and renters will deepen, creating political tensions that could destabilize local communities. Young people will increasingly give up on London entirely, seeking opportunities in more affordable cities. The mayor's office is already tracking significant outmigration among the 25 to 35 age group. Without intervention, London risks becoming a city only for the wealthy and the subsidized, with little space for the middle-income families who historically formed the backbone of London communities. The economic consequences could be severe as businesses struggle to operate without access to affordable workforce housing. The mayor's warning isn't just political posturing, it's a desperate attempt to force recognition that London's housing crisis requires emergency-level intervention. The choice facing Londoners isn't between expensive housing and affordable housing. It's between a housing crisis and a housing catastrophe. And according to the mayor's latest briefings, without immediate action, the catastrophe is already beginning.